Do you have any difficulties securing any locations or anything like that?
So I would say probably 90% of the movie was shot in the city. And it some of it may have been close set. So like, there's a torture scene and it's in a warehouse of some sort, right? It's still in the city, but it's not exposed, right? We're not outside. I wouldn't say that like we really had any issues. And that's because, our staff they do this all the time. So getting permits for all of that and everything is something that's very repetitive for us. It's a bit of muscle memory. So that's really, when I set up my company years ago, my whole goal was to be able to get into feature films eventually. Instead of like just trying to go into it immediately, I kind of had a methodical approach to it. And so this is kind of where we ended up. So I think getting locations in the city is not an issue. When we wrote the movie, right? Sorry, when Nico wrote the movie, he had in mind the locations that he shot. So he lives here. Nico lives here. He's a commercial and a feature film DP, and he lives here. So he knew the actors already. He had these in mind. I had them in mind. We discussed that. We discussed locations, right, as he's building the script, and the locations he had in mind as well. So like we already had all of that in mind. So we actually wrote the script for Thailand, right? We didn't just write it and then figure out how to adapt it to Thailand. It was written exactly and specifically for actually all these actors that we hired and the locations. So getting them was no issue. Now, where we ran into issues because of the what we were trying, the sheer like monstrosity that we were trying to pull off. For the amount of money and time that we had was just ridiculous. In hindsight, I probably I would do this differently next time. But we shot, we went into overtime several times and, the locations didn't allow it. And this is where we had to like do the whole like begging and pleading and, like how can we still, make this work? And then when it didn't work, we had to go back, man. We had to add on another day. There was overtime costs. There was additional, day costs. So, it was as like buttoned up as like I was making it sound. Like I think it amplified everything else because how buttoned up it always is for me in the past. I thought it would be like this, or just, my muscle memory thought it would be. And then when we got to shooting, it just, was something different. And I ended up having to figure out ways around. And this is directing, in my opinion, right? Directing is being able to understand the challenges and figuring out how to get around it and come up with creative solutions, because that's all you have at the moment, and if you go without something, how am I going to cut around it later, right? Like, how am I going to make this work whenever we're actually cutting the video, cutting the scenes, right? How's that going to work later? So that's the whole, that's like, the other 50% of the directing. So I think that there was a lot of challenges with the locations in that aspect, but not getting the locations, but with what we were trying to do with the locations was the big challenge.
Well, man, yeah, I mean, I definitely noticed that there were a lot of locations. I've in my head, just from experiences I've had, I thought that would be kind of tricky. But that's awesome that you've had so much experience with your other work in the past that it was kind of a little bit of muscle memory for you. Yeah. So another question I had. So there's a lot of fight scenes. So I've never filmed a fight scene before.